Hello. Today we're going to be talking about the spirit of MI. The spirit of motivational interviewing is the foundation of the work that we do. We can learn all types of skills in order to help people find their motivation to change behaviors. But if we're not operating out of the spirit of motivational interviewing when we do that, then we can actually cause harm. The skills can be used in ways to manipulate other people. It's only from the spirit of MI that we help people find their own motivation. The spirit of MI has four components: partnership, acceptance, evocation, and compassion. It's where the four of these components come together where we are operating from the spirit of MI. Acceptance has four components of itself. They are absolute worth, accurate empathy, autonomy, and affirmation. When we're talking about things from the terms of the spirit, we're talking about the beliefs, the underlying beliefs that we have and that we operate out of when we're working with a client. The belief in absolute worth is that each person will grow if given the optimal conditions. That is, that each person has it within them to make a change for themselves. They have the ability. They just might need help finding it. Accurate empathy is a little different than the way we use the word empathy in our everyday language. When we're talking about accurate empathy in terms of motivational interviewing, we're not looking at how we would feel if we were in somebody else's shoes. It's about seeing the world through their eyes. It's about how they feel in their shoes, which means that we are constantly making the effort to understand another person's worldview. Autonomy is about honoring and respecting each person's choice. This is about understanding and operating from a standpoint where each person has the right and the ability to make their own choices for themselves, even when they choose things that we would not choose for them. This seems like an easy thing to do until you start to consider some of the things that we work on with people, especially young people. When we're talking with somebody about their substance use, it is understanding and respecting the person's right to maintain their use of substances if that's what they choose to do. It's also when we're talking to somebody who has some criminal history and is criminally involved in the community. Some of us work with drug dealers, and it's about understanding and respecting that person's right to choose to continue selling drugs on the corner if that's what they want to do. It's even respecting the young woman's choice who wants to get pregnant at a very young age and tries to do that. It's about understanding that every person has the right to make their own choices, even if they don't fit in with the lifestyle choice that you think they should have. And the last piece is affirmation. This is the constant effort to seek out and acknowledge each person's strengths and efforts. We can't sit around and wait for something to sound good that we can affirm for somebody. This is about looking for their strengths, especially in the hardships that they propose. So when a young person or a client is considering or talking about some negative experiences they've had or some hardships that they're going through, it's about coming from the standpoint of looking for what strength the person is showing that enables them to maybe get through that situation, or to the determination to continually work hard at it. Or even if you're talking to a young person about the fact that they can't seem to get to class on time, it's about acknowledging and making understood that there's still that strength within that. The reframe there is that they may not be coming on time, but they're continually working at coming on time. Or maybe they're not coming on time because they don't want to be there at all. And the reframe is that despite not wanting to be here, you still continually show up. It's about seeking out and looking for those strengths so that you can help people see where their capabilities lie, where their strengths lie, so that they can use those in other areas of their life. The second component of motivational interviewing is partnership. This is a really different standpoint than we have with most of the professionals we work with in the world. When we go to the doctor, or usually the psychologist, or any other sort of professional, it's an uneven power dynamic where there is an expert who is doing something to us or for us, and we are a passive recipient of those services. In a motivational interviewing conversation, this is not the dynamic. The dynamic here really needs to be of equal power sharing, that no person, especially not us as the counselor, is the expert, that we're not taking on that role, that we know more and that we're here to do something to them or for them. This is really about working with people to find and make the change that they want to make in their life. And it's really about making sure that we pull out and find the person's own expertise in making their own changes. That's how we help people find the ability and confidence to make those changes. Compassion is really about making sure that everything that we're doing and that we're coming from the standpoint of that the other person's needs are first and foremost. And this sounds pretty easy to do, but take into consideration and think about that we all have mandates of what we have to get done for the job, or we have outcomes and services that we're supposed to get these clients to sign up for and complete. But what if that's not what the client wants? What if they're not interested in whatever program it is or outcome that they're supposed to reach? What do you do then? How do you continually put their needs first and everything else second? This is about being open and really listening, and not just listening, waiting for your opportunity to speak, but really listening and seeing another person, understanding that person. And probably the hardest part of this is really talking about non-judgment. Now, none of us are perfect when it comes to being able to operate from a position of non-judgment. It's about the practice of it. How do we make sure that we are continually working on leaving out our own judgments about what is right or wrong for another person? This is another one of those places where we talk about it intellectually and it seems like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I really work hard on that. But we don't necessarily pay attention to everything that's in a judgment. Going back to some of those examples that we talked about earlier, when you've got a young woman who wants to get pregnant, or you've got a young man who makes the decision to sell drugs, or you've got a person who, despite knowing all the risks of smoking or drinking or doing something else, using some other kind of substance, they continue to choose to do it. And that it's not necessarily a question of what's right or what's wrong. Whenever we use language like what's right or wrong or good or bad, there's judgment involved in that. And then oftentimes, the society that we live in is pretty clear about certain judgments. Smoking kills you. It gives you cancer. And yet people continue to do it. So it's not a question of what's right or wrong. And my judgment in that case has no bearing on another person's ability or desire to make a change in that area in their life. The only judgment that matters is their own. And when we allow our judgments, positive or negative, to enter into a conversation, we really distract away from and impose our values on another person instead of allowing them to find and deal with their own values on the subject. It's really counterproductive. So we got to think about, how do we check ourselves, make sure that we understand what our judgments are about every topic that comes up, and make sure that we are finding ways to leave them outside the door and genuinely entering into these conversations with curiosity about what this is for another person, without making an assumption that everyone feels the same way about all of these topics that can be a little bit more difficult and nuanced than that. The last component of the spirit of motivational interviewing is evocation. And as we talk about motivational interviewing going forward in this course, we're going to talk about evocation a lot. We talk about it in the skills, we talk about it in the processes. We talk about it as the ultimate aim and goal of motivational interviewing is to really evoke from the other person their own desires and abilities and reasons and needs to make change. When we're talking about it in terms of the spirit of MI, we're talking about the foundation, the belief that people have it within them already, that they know the answers to their own questions already. They do not need us to tell them what's good or bad for them or what the facts about any of their behaviors are. They already know that. So it's about trust. It's about extending the trust that people know what's good for them, what's in their best interest, and that given the right conditions, they will make those choices for themselves. They will ultimately choose what's in their best interest, and you have to trust that and allow it to happen. The other piece of this is also understanding that Whenever we have behaviors that don't seem to serve us anymore, what we might consider as negative or hurtful behaviors to ourselves, it's understanding that they all came from someplace. We don't do these things for no reason. When somebody has a behavior that we see as a negative for them, it comes from a place of understanding that behavior at some point, and probably to some extent still today, serves some purpose for them. It meets a need. There's a really good reason why they do it. And until we start to look for what those parts of it is, how does this behavior serve them, we can't really start to talk about what they should do in order to replace that, because we really need to help them figure out how to meet those needs. Those needs still exist. How do we meet those needs in a way that costs them less, or that might be more helpful to them in the long run? So it's really about evoking from them, how does this meet your needs? How is this behavior serving you? And how might else you meet that need? And how might you be able to serve yourself more on that? It's about understanding too at our foundation that motivation already exists within all people. They have the motivation, they have the resources within themselves that can be called upon. This quote I really like. It says, "You have what you need, and together we will find it." And that's really the position we take as motivational interviewers, is that it's all already within you. I'm just here to help you access it and find it for yourself. So as we said before, these are the 4 components of the spirit of motivational interviewing. And it's where these 4 pieces come together that we can really operate from the foundation that we really need to be coming from in order to have a motivational interviewing conversation and relationship. Without this foundation, we are not doing MI. So it's something we really need to think about. And when we're thinking about the belief system here, this is a practice. This is not something that someday you're going to wake up and be perfect at this. There's always going to be some client or some behavior or some situation that is going to challenge you in these areas, that's going to really press your own buttons and challenge you to really think about, how do I extend my compassion for this? Where's my empathy for this person? How do I let go of judgment about this thing that seems so clear? Those are the practices that we really need to work on ourselves, so that we can really be the guide and the companion, the partner on this journey that our clients really need us to be, in order for them to be able to do the exploration that they really need to do in order to work towards change. So you got to think about how do you work this into your work? How do you think about this on a regular basis? How do you practice and grow in these areas over time, so that you're continually working towards being the MI spirit, so that you can offer that to people more genuinely and more consistently throughout time?